Welcome to my channel Technomora. Today's episode is not about restoring something, so grab your favorite snack or drink, sit back and enjoy. When I announced that this episode is not about restoring something, I wasn't being facetious. This is actually not something, let's say, from a collection or anything. This is actually, you could say, a tool. It's a color TV, a portable one, and the image it gives is actually reasonably good. But that's not the problem with this. The real problem is that it has no sound. So we need to figure out what the problem with the sound portion of this portable TV is. The model number is KRB-1542. So let me show you. It's at the back there. Okay, there you go. Yeah, it's a Contec. Now, I don't know this brand, and I'll be honest with you, I've been looking all over the internet for a schematic or service manual for this portable TV, and I haven't found one. I bought this TV a number of years ago. I can't remember exactly when. I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm fairly certain I bought it in Germany. As you can tell, the previous owner, or one of the previous owners, had scribbled the frequencies on a little piece of paper, which he then taped to the body of the TV with the stations he wanted to receive, right? But these stations were analog stations. As you know, all of us nowadays, we watch digital TV, right? So I can safely remove this dirty little list of his, because I am going to give the TV a little bit of a cleaning. But there you go. Now, okay, that's it. So now, when we turn to the back of the TV, the person who owned this was really, crazy about adding little pieces of paper, the post-its and what have you, to it. He also added a sticker, or I should say maybe just a piece of paper, to the top of the power adapter of the TV, and it says wir entsorgen für Sie. It says Elektro-Görders or Görders, Elektroschrott, Leuchtstoffröhren, EDW, Hi-Fi, TV, etc. And that seems to be a company located somewhere in a town called Ramsbeck. So I could be wrong, but this power adapter was bought from a vintage electronics shop, which is called Görders. I don't know if it works, but I think it does. I mean, I haven't used this TV for a long while, so yeah, that's one. And then there's another sticker here which says oben weiß and out is schwarz. I don't know what he meant by that. I mean, it says here, yeah, at the top white plus out is black with an arrow pointing here. So yeah, I mean all the connectors at the back are black. Yeah, so I don't know why he put this here. So then he says, I can't read the first word, and it says red, and then input schwarz, and input is black again. Okay, so wait a minute. If we take a look at the connectors at the back, it says here, let me see, it says audio on the left, so these two here are audio, and then these two on the right say video. Okay, so it's quite possible that these two are video inputs and these are audio inputs or outputs. I think probably these two are outputs, these two are inputs. But why would you only have two connectors for video? Yeah, I mean, either you have four, which is RGB plus sound, or you have two, which is then composite video and sound. Yeah, so yeah, probably that's what it is. Yeah, and then you have an antenna connector here, a 75 ohm antenna connector, to which back in the day we would connect a roof antenna for TV reception, analog TV, and then there's a little switch which allows you to select either the external, so the roof antenna, or the internal antenna, which is unfortunately broken off. So there was a telescopic antenna here. Alright, I need to open the case of the TV, and to do that I need to obviously unscrew a number of screws, and two of the screws are hidden under the battery lid, you know, and more precisely, I don't know if you guys can see this, but here the screws are indicated by two arrows. Yeah, there's an arrow here and there's an arrow down here, right? And it points at screws hidden right down there. You know, they are buried in the battery compartment, right? Okay, so, and then there are two screws at the front of the TV as well, hidden inside the feet of the TV. So one here and one over here. Alright, so I noticed that to be able to remove the case, or at least the top of the case, from the TV, I more than likely will have to undo two more screws at the back, and they in turn are indicated with two arrows. Alright, there. So there's one over here and there's one over there, and you can see the arrow right next to it. Alright, so These two are black and not brass colored. Okay, so let's see now. Okay, yep, here we go. So here we go. We just lift it up. Okay, and there's a speaker inside. Okay, I will have to unsolder the speaker because otherwise it's going to be way too hard for me to work on the TV. Alright, I unsoldered the speaker, and the blue lead, strangely enough, is the plus, the black is the negative, and the speaker over there is, I would say, it's a fairly standard speaker, about 3" in diameter, 1" high. It's 16 ohms and it's rated for, I'd say, 0.8 watts with a maximum of 1 watt output power. Let's see if the speaker works, right? Because since we're not getting any sound out of it, maybe it's the speaker that's broken, right? So let's see if we have continuity. Okay, so I have my multimeter here. So the multimeter is set to continuity. Let's try it out first. Okay, so now let's see if the speaker gives us any sort of continuity, right? So, this is the plus. Oh, okay. So no, the speaker doesn't give us any continuity. Haha, really? Could it be that simple? That it's simply the speaker that's broken? My. Alright, I took out my surgical knife, yeah, which is extremely sharp, and works way much better than a box cutter knife, but which is also 10 times more dangerous, yeah, to cut through the glue which is holding the speaker, right? Now, while I'm doing this, I want to say that if you're going to work on equipment which is AC powered, like this TV is, whenever you open up the case of such an appliance, you should always disconnect it from the AC. Okay? If you're not sure how to work on AC equipment, then don't, you know, because the risks involved with it can be very, very dangerous indeed. Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, it's quite easy to electrocute yourself, you know, and let me tell you, to be zapped by AC is really not pleasant. Alright, before I start working on the interior of the TV, let's have a closer look at what's inside, right? So, to begin with, inside the TV you have two main PCBs. You have the lower PCB here, which contains the tuner and IF section of the TV mostly, and the amplification, of course. So this is the tuner right here, and then below there, right there, is the amplification IC, a Toshiba TA7313AP. Alright, I mounted a temporary little 3-watt speaker to the TV because I couldn't find in my stash a 3-inch low profile speaker like the original one, right? So let me show you. The original one looked like this, okay, and the supposedly 3-inch speaker that I have looks like this. Yeah. So this speaker here, which is the new one, is about, let's say, an inch and a half high or deep. Yeah, and but it does have more or less the same diameter as the original one. It's slightly bigger though, so it doesn't have quite the right profile to mount it in the place of this one. So I could adapt this one, but let's wait and see if we can get any sound out of the TV, right? So I know this speaker works. I attached the TV to the AC with its power extension or transformer. So yeah, let's see. Let's try the radio first. So I set it on FM. So here we go. Nothing. So nothing. It's completely dead. No crackling, no nothing. Okay, let's try the TV. Okay, we got image. Yeah. Yeah, we got image, but no sound. Alright, I took out my favorite contact cleaner. I'm not sponsored by them. I bought it with my own money, but it's the manual 9893. Okay, contact cleaner. Alright, so I'm going to spray liberally. Oh, by the way, I need to disconnect the TV from the AC. There you go. So let me spray liberally on the contact there. Ooh. There you go. And for good measure, I'm going to spray on the other contacts. Right there. Okay. There you go. So let's give it a minute to dry up, and then we'll give it another try. So no, there's a tiny little bit of sound on the AM band coming from the speaker, but that's it at maximum volume. So I think what we should do next is set up the oscilloscope and have a look at the signal that comes from the amplification chip. I found out that the TA7313AP chip, which is a Toshiba chip originally, by the way, is an amplifier chip, and that one is located down there, right there, on one of the main PCBs or print boards of the TV, right? So the Contec color TV, and it's right down there. Now we do know it sort of works. At least it outputs a little bit of sound, since the speaker that I attached to the output gave out a little bit of crackling, and I could hear a very faint a radio station on the FM band, just one, the closest one to where I live. Now, that being said, as you can tell, the PCB where the amp chip is located, so down there, is, well, located at the bottom of the TV. And to work on it, to do some measurements and who knows, maybe even replace parts, I need to do something that I was actually very reluctant to do, which is I need to release the bottom part of the cabinet of the TV. So I unscrewed the bottom PCB, but it doesn't seem willing, so to speak, to move very much. And as far as I can tell, it should be able to either slide backwards, or the bottom part of the cabinet should be able to drop away from the bottom PCB. Now, what I do notice is that I can easily move the side PCB, so I should be able to release that. By the way, the side PCB is attached with this pin here into the plastic holder right there. Okay, so right there. But once you gently unhook it from there, the side PCB with all the CRT electronics, you know, for the horizontal and vertical sweep, etc., and the high voltage, can be lifted rather easily. Now, what I also noticed is that the front of the TV can be gently lifted away from the bottom part. Now, I stress the word gently because, as you can tell, the CRT is mounted to the front part of the TV, yeah, and the neck of the CRT tube right there, yeah, is located in a rather dangerous position, yeah. It would only take a little bit of force to break it. So if you're going to follow along with me, you do so at your own risk. Remember, CRTs are vacuum tubes, and when they are broken through mechanical stress or by dropping them or dropping some equipment on them, they can and they will often implode and then afterward explode. Okay, so you can get really hurt working on a CRT monitor. So if you don't feel confident enough and you don't have enough information about working on these, then don't. When I lifted away the video PCB, and I guess that's how I'm going to call it from now on. So when I lifted away the video PCB from the bottom of the case, I noticed that the bottom PCB was attached with one more screw to the bottom, and it was located somewhere there in the middle, yeah, but hidden away underneath the vertical board here, yeah. So, and it was a Phillips screw just like the other two, yeah, same length, same size, same type. Alright, now theoretically I should be able to release the bottom PCB now from the bottom part of the case. The way I see it, it should just somehow slide away. Here's another problem. Apparently the engineers at Contec decided to fix the power cables for coming from the power supply, or I should say going to the power supply, yeah, by these little plastic tabs which were just melted around the cables to hold them, yeah. So and I need to release those wires if I am to release the whole thing. Now there are two options: either I somehow cut or melt away those plastic tabs, yeah, or I unsolder the power cables from here, from the vertical board. So I'm considering which would be best, although the obvious thing to do would be, of course, to release those little plastic tabs over there, but you know, I mean, it's done in such a way that if I bend or file them a way that I can pass the wires through, it's more than likely that either one or both will break off. On the other hand, there's enough play, so if I unsolder the wires, I can just slide them from between the two tabs. So that is more than likely the option I'm going to take. There was another screw hidden under a bunch of wires on the other side of the horizontal PCB, you know, the tuner PCB, and it's hidden right there, right next to the tuner module. Alright, I had to juggle it around a bit, but I'm practically there. Not quite, but getting really close now to being able to release the bottom PCB with the amplifier and the tuner and the power supply over there. Okay, so down there is part of the power supply, and to do that I need to release yet two more screws here at the front of the PCB. And you can tell that the dial mechanism, yeah, is attached with those two screws to the bottom plate of well, to the bottom part, let's say, of the TV. Now I'm I'm very reluctant to release it, although probably I won't have any other choice than to do it, because you see there's this whole intricate wire loop, right? So that the wire with which the tuning is done, and yeah, if I release the two screws holding the PCB to the front part, let's say, then I might get into trouble. Now, yeah, I don't think there's any other choice than to do it. Alright, I took an executive decision that I am going to release these two screws so that I can lift up the main sound and tuner board out of the bottom of the TV. Small but interesting detail: the screws that hold down the PCB are marked with a white arrow. So you see one there and you see one there, okay? And I'm certain on the other side there are identical arrows. Now, strangely enough, or maybe I'm wrong, oh yeah, there you go. So this screw at least is indicated with a white arrow as well. You can see it there, right? The other is covered up with components and some waxy stuff. So I don't know if there's a white arrow under there, and I'm certainly not going to mess around with it, because those coils are pretty critical for the tuning of the circuit. So I really don't want to mess with that. Okay, here we go. Screw number one. Okay, that's one. Now the second one. Come on. Yep. Okay. The two screws are released. So now, technically, I should be able to... Yeah, here we go. Well. Okie dokie. There you go. So, made it. See? The bottom of the TV's case. Yeah. Perfect. So all I need to do is give this a good clean later on, but now at least I can work on the sound and tuner board of the TV set. For those of you who are interested in seeing the bottom of the PCB, I mean the main tuner and soundboard, well, there it is. And it also gives a very nice view of the dial cord mechanism. So let me show you from close up. Okay, so it's quite intricate, and there are two dial mechanisms actually. So one is for the TV band and the other is for the radio. So yeah, interesting, very very intricate mechanism, and it's also interesting to see how the wires are looped around those wheels, you know, just in case one day I would have to well, I would have to repair the dial cords. That's the kind of job that I really don't like. I mean, that's, to say it in a crude way, that's the shittiest job one would have to do. That is to rewire the dial mechanism, you know, to thread a new cord. That's the pits. I really hate that. But okay, the PCB looks fine. I see no shorts, no nothing. So what I'm going to do next is have a closer look at the earphone jack, just to exclude that that would be the cause of all the trouble. The sound is really weak. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but it's practically inaudible. Now, however, when I look at it on the scope, you can clearly see there is sound coming from the sound chip. Let me show you. Alright, so we know that the sound chip is the TA7313AP, and the output pin of the chip is pin 6, right? So let's measure there, and I'll show you the graph on the oscilloscope, to give you an idea of what I'm measuring. Okay, so we're measuring peak to peak, by the way. Okay, here we go. I'm touching the positive of the speaker now. So that's clearly a sound wave. Now let me show you what I'm getting when I'm touching pin 6 of the amplifier chip, right? 6, here we go. This is up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there you go. So this is what I'm measuring at pin 6 of the amplifier chip. An extremely weak signal. Okay, right now I'm on the scale of 100 millivolts per division. Okay, so one little square on the screen is 100 millivolts. So yeah, it's an extremely weak signal, but it is a sound signal. Let me see if I can enlarge it a little bit. Alright, now we're on the scale of 50 millivolts per division. Okay. So yeah, there is sound coming from the amplifier chip, but it's extremely weak. Alright, when I follow the traces on the PCB, on the underside of the PCB, I can tell that pin 6, so the output pin of the TA7313, is connected to this capacitor here and that one over here. Okay, so I'm going to unmount those two capacitors and I'm going to measure them just to make sure that they are not shorted or something like that. Alright, I unsoldered the largest capacitor from this position here and a smaller one from that position there. Okay, now I just finished measuring the large capacitor and this is the result I get. So it's poor. I mean, it's not the worst that I've seen in my life, but it's certainly not good. It's quite a lossy capacitor, and if I look at the bottom of the capacitor, I can see traces of leakage, you know, and I mean by leakage I mean chemical leakage. You can see it around the anode pin of the capacitor. Okay, so the upper pin. Yeah, there are definitely traces of leakage. So this cap I am for sure going to replace. The other cap, the smaller one, measures fine actually, to my surprise. It's 16 volt 47 microfarad and it's pretty average. I mean, it's certainly usable. This one, I wouldn't trust it too much. It's a 10 volts 470 microfarad. Both capacitors are rated for 85 degrees Celsius. Let me see if I can show you the temperature rating. There. See it at the bottom? 85 degrees Celsius. So yeah, it's a brand, it's a no-name brand, I would say. I mean, Tosin Japan. I don't know that brand. Okay. Alright, I just replaced the two caps. The 470 microfarad one and the 47 microfarad one. And at pin 6, so the output pin of the amplifier chip, and this is the sound I'm getting now. Yeah, it's a little louder, but not much. So you could argue it did help a tiny little bit, but no, where it should be blaring loud, and the volume is at maximum. Alright, I replaced the electrolytic that was connected to pin 2 of the amplifier chip. It's a 33 microfarad 16 volts. Let me see, where are the markings here? There. Okay. Yet another Tosin. And yeah, there's a bit of dirt at the bottom of the capacitor, but I think that's Yeah, that's just a little bit of dust or something. Yeah, a dust bunny or something. Either way, I measured it, and the values were really bad, you know. So this capacitor is spent, and replacing it did increase the volume of the sound yet again. So now I can hear the sound without having to put my ear right next to the speaker. So which is good. So that might mean that we're making headway. So there are two more electrolytics involved with the amplifier chip, but those are more for filtering of the sound, whatever that may be. The data sheet isn't very specific, but yeah, there are two more electrolytics to check. Alright, I've investigated the performance of the TA7313 AP amplifier chip, because I wasn't convinced just yet that the chip wasn't working. So in other words, that the chip was blown, right? Because if you look at it from the outside, it looks perfectly normal. I mean, okay, sure, I replaced a few electrolytics around it, mainly those going to its input and output, and also a few electrolytics that are used for filtering inside the amplifier chip. Alright, so and everything around the chip so far looks normal, despite the fact, of course, that when I switch it on, I can barely hear any sound coming from it, in fact. So, like I said, I'm not entirely, or I wasn't entirely convinced that the amplifier chip was bad. And in fact, one of the things that I did next is to measure the voltages on the power amplifier chip. Let me put the camera on the tripod, and then I'll show you what I actually measured. So as I said before, I wasn't convinced that the amplifier chip was bad. I wasn't entirely convinced that it was bad, and I decided to measure the power or the voltage which the power chip gets from the power supply, right? So let's measure it. So pin 5 of the amplifier chip is ground. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is ground. Okay, and pin 7 is the plus DC volts. Watch the multimeter. So 11.88 volts, which is more than enough. So next I thought, okay, if the amplifier chip gets enough DC voltage to function, then let's see if it actually works. So I decided to solder a 100 nanofarad capacitor to its input pin, which is pin 2. And I'll show you in close up. So there, right there. Alright, so I soldered it right there to pin 2 of the amplifier chip, which is the input pin. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to avoid to inject DC into its input. Alright, so now let me show you what I'm getting when I vary the input signal from 0 to 4 kilohertz. Alright, so here we go. The amplifier is on. It's at minimum amplitude, by the way. Alright, so I would say that's pretty conclusive. In other words, the amplifier chip seems to work just fine. So then I have to look for a problem further on somewhere else upstream on the main board, which is really annoying since I don't have any schematic to work with. Alright, again, I don't have a schematic of this TV, so I'm really figuring it out as I go along. So when I start at pin 2 of the amplifier chip and I follow the traces or the trace on the PCB, I end up, so let me see, pin 2 is there, so I end up when I follow the trace from pin 2 all the way back here, I end up at an electrolytic here, yeah, which is labeled as capacitor 633. I know you guys can't see it very well, but there. Alright, so that capacitor over there, yeah, and that's an electrolytic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to unsolder the electrolytic because I don't have a meter which can measure capacitance in circuit. Alright, I unsoldered the capacitor and it turns out to be a 1 microfarad 50 volts capacitor. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I think so. Alright, and I measured it with my tester and it says it's close to 1 microfarad, so 1000 nanofarad. Okay, it's not very lossy, but it has a reasonably high ESR, which is not so so bizarre. I mean, these tiny capacitors, which this one is, okay, the little capacitors like these in general do have a reasonably high ESR. Alright, after replacing that capacitor, I kept following the trace up, and I ended up at another electrolytic, namely this one here, which is labeled as capacitor 632, which is also an electrolytic, and it was an electrolytic of 1 microfarad 50 volts. So this one here. Let me see here. Sorry, 2.2 microfarad 50 volts. Excuse me. So 2.2 microfarad 50 volts. Alright. So I replaced that one too, and it's located right here. Okay, and it goes to, in fact, the volume potentiometer of the TV. So yeah, that's what I did, and this is what I'm getting now. Oh yeah, screaming loud. So yeah, I replaced the capacitor, and there you go. That's what I'm getting now. Now, when I measure the capacitor, it tests okay. I mean the old one, right? So yeah, it's a little bit higher than 2.2 microfarad, and the loss factor is not extremely high, neither is the ESR. So you could argue that this capacitor is basically average. So it could still be used, but you know, just like the previous capacitor, if I have an old capacitor out, an old electrolytic, if I removed an old electrolytic, I'm not going to place it back on the PCB, right? I could just as well replace it by an entirely new electrolytic, and that's exactly what I did. Now, you know, like I said, the electrolytic basically should still be usable, but as you can tell yourself, by replacing it, I basically repaired the TV, or well, the sound part of the TV, right? And it's pretty loud. I mean, this little speaker is rated for 3 watts, 4 ohms. Now the original speaker, I've got it here. The original speaker was rated for 1 watt, yeah, 16 ohms, yeah, okay, 1 watt maximum. In fact, the working power rating is 0.8 watts, okay, 16 ohms. This little speaker is rated at 4 ohms, 3 watt. So yeah, it's screaming loud now, as it should be. So I'm beginning to think this project is has ended. Okay, so I'm going to run through the FM band, you know, and we might receive a few stations, but obviously I'm not going to dwell on any particular radio station for obvious reasons. Yeah, I don't want to get a copy strike from YouTube. So here we go.
beslissing, maar de selectie van onze kandidaat is wel al gebeurd. Het is op de vergadering van de IBU-leden zelfs niet gekomen tot een stemming over Israël in of uit. Een meerderheid van de leden vond de recente aanpassingen van de spelregels op het Songfestival, onder meer over televoting, al voldoende.
Dankjewel, Johnny. En we vernemen zo pas dat 90 miljard aan Oekraïne. Ook de meeste oppositiepartijen vinden dat de wever voet bij stuk moet houden, omdat het plan grote risico's inhoudt voor ons land. Verslag van Sisse Michiels.
Wij zijn bereid offers te brengen, maar men mag van dit land niet het onmogelijke vragen.
Meestal heeft de oppositie enkel kritiek op de regering, maar vandaag kreeg de wever ook aanmoedigingen. Bijvoorbeeld van Raoul Hedebouw van de PvdA.
Meneer de eerste minister, wij geven natuurlijk steun en dat verzet tegen de Europese Commissie.
En ook van Dieter van Bezien van Groen.
U eist onvoorwaardelijke solidariteit van de andere Europese landen. En dat is zeer terecht. U heeft daarin gelijk.
Wouter Vermeers van Vlaams Belang wil dat de premier niet toegeeft.
Als Viktor Orbán een vuist maakt tegen Europa, dat schreeuwt het parlement moord en...
Snel aan te pakken. Sportvoetbalclub Standaard, Union en AA Gent vragen om de competitie.
Yeah, it's 7 p.m. There's news on every radio station now.
18 ploegen, dat was goedgekeurd door een 2/3 meerderheid van alle profclubs. Maar de 4 clubs zeggen nu dat er te veel onzekerheid is. Onder meer over de inkomsten door alle problemen met de streamingdienst DAZN. De Pro-League, de organisatie, zal de vraag om de competitiehervorming uit te stellen over
Het zijn die je nu van mij krijgt. Ik begin op de E17 richting Antwerpen tot Verhaasdonk en Alphen. Komt er 35 minuten bij.
There you go. We scanned the whole FM band. So the TV, as I said at the start of the episode, is lacking an antenna. Whether the antenna was broken off or unmounted, I don't know. But I went to look in my stash of parts and I found a brand new antenna, which I'm going to mount to the foot of the TV right here, right? Which means I need to release a little screw and then mount the antenna into the foot of the original antenna, and that way the TV will be as good as original. And there you go, a brand new antenna fixed to the socket of the original antenna. Folds up, rotates 360 degrees, extends all the way, right, and it fits right in the rest position of the original antenna. There you go. If I'm not mistaken, this antenna cost me somewhere around $5 or so on eBay. Obviously it's not, or probably not, exactly the same as the original antenna, but I mean, it's better than none at all, right? So there you go. On with the repair. I should say actually I'm pretty much done repairing the TV. All I need to do now is mount it all back into its case, find a way to attach temporarily the little speaker inside the cabinet of the TV, and yeah, and there you go. Problem fixed. Alright, the TV is practically reassembled. The only thing I need to do is clean the front of the TV and obviously mount back the top of the case. But yeah, that will be it. So a bird's eye view of the inner part of the TV, which will probably interest some of you. So down there is the tuner and amplification PCB, you could say. Alright. With the on-off volume button. Alright. Then you have the power supply of the TV. Well, I should say radio and TV. So the power supply is down there in that corner there. Alright. And then you have the antenna and connector board at the back. Alright. So and then at the back, the vertical PCB is everything specifically for the TV itself, and it's the board which takes care of the vertical and horizontal deflection, which uses the deflection coils you see here to form an image. Alright, and then there's also the high voltage section, which produces all the necessary high voltages for the anodes and cathodes of the tube. Alright, and then obviously there's also the brightness and the color saturation, and all those things are also on the board. It does make use of what some people call a jungle chip. So a very large chip which basically does all the work to, to form an image on the screen, so it's down there. Yeah, it's a Toshiba TA7698AP. So, and that chip basically decodes the high frequency signal which comes in from the antenna, transforms it, or rather the tuner, demodulates it, yeah, so puts it through a number of IF stages. So the tuner is right here. Okay, and once all the image and sound signals are decoded for an analog TV channel, they are sent back to the image processing board, which is this board here, and the Toshiba chip down there takes care of translating the information that comes through the antenna into an image and sound in the speaker. Alright. So there you go. A bird's eye view of the inside of the Contec KRB-1542 color TV. Alright, I'm going to give you a small demo of the repaired Contec portable TV. Now just a few remarks. First of all, the CRT of the TV, yeah, the picture tube, is a little bit tired, and I have to play around with the brightness and the contrast to give you a good enough image, but the color is great. Okay. Also, this is a 4:3 format image, while the DVD is a 16:9. So you'll see that the picture is a bit compressed in its width. Yeah, but that's a normal, let's say, phenomenon. All right. Also, you'll see at certain times you'll see a few stripes, vertical stripes in the image, and that has to do with, let's say, filtering, power filtering. And as you know, I didn't replace the capacitors in the power supply. So yeah, that might improve if I replace those capacitors. But that will be for another episode. So I want to end up by saying that it would be of a great help if you would give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. The YouTube algorithm is murderous, and I noticed that ever since they changed the algorithm, every thumbs up and every subscription really counts. So you could really give me a big help by doing both. It's for free, so please do give me a thumbs up and your subscription. So there you go. I'm going to show you a few scenes of the movie I put on, which is called The Fifth Element, and I think some of you might know the movie. I'm not going to dwell too long on certain scenes. I just want to give you an idea of the TV working, right? So here we go.
I'm really sorry to have to resort to these methods, Mr. Wallace. No.
Alright, and that will conclude the demo of the Contec KRB-1542 portable TV. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon for another video on my channel.